it's overwhelming, but it's also our jobs.
Mm-hmm. Our job is only going to get harder.
It's worrisome.
This is something that's unprecedented.
Now is not the time to be a cowboy. No one has anything to prove. We're all in this together.
Welcome to Reporting from the Frontline of a Pandemic. I'm Krystin Beaulieu, and I spoke with Melinda Doyle, senior writer-producer for Investigation Discovery. She went from working in an office with all of her peers to now working in an office with just herself. Here's more on what she had to say about that transition.
So day to day, what I'm responsible for is creating the marketing for our on-air programs primarily, and that's that's everything from screening and scripting to producing QC, making sure that everything gets to air correctly and that there's no mistakes on anything. So it's kind of start to finish the on-air 30-second spots that everyone's so accustomed to seeing. I'm responsible for.
Wow. How have you had to change the way that you usually work since this pandemic kind of started? People have been needing to work from home, and how has that kind of changed for you?
Yeah, I mean, day to day, it's completely different. Like right now, I'm at home in my home office, and I think with everybody being in the same boat, it's definitely been a challenge. Just logistically, not so much. It's been a challenge logistically just to get everybody on the same page. Management wise, I think it's a very challenging thing because conversations that could have been just, you turn around, you're like, hey, take a look at this, now needs to be a lot of times they're scheduled meetings, and people have kids and kids are running around in the background, and it's a lot. It's a very difficult time for everybody, and just kind of managing all of the ins and outs of a pandemic with your day-to-day job has definitely been something that I don't think anybody anticipated, the complexity level. For me, as a senior writer producer, the day-to-day for me is very different because I'm used to being in suite with an editor, and it's very different to be here and to have to watch cuts on my computer and trying to communicate back and forth. It's slowed the process down a little bit, but we've been very fortunate in that we've been able to kind of get things in place where I can now screen things like pretty much real time with my editor via Zoom and some other things. So that evolution happened very quickly, and I think that that's something that even when all of this is over, it's going to be something that I think we utilize more moving forward.
So do you help kind of organize the layout of the shows and the rundown of the shows and what gets put on air and what gets put online?
Yeah, so I'm marketing. So there's, all of that is kind of broken up into different groups. So that's more, outlining the shows and what goes into the shows. We have producers who are just, we refer to them as production. Mm-hmm. And they work with external vendors who are producing the shows on content and all that stuff. And then there's actually another department which dictates they're kind of in charge of our social presence, and they're creating like everything from memes to show lists to like articles. So and we support them to some degree with some materials, but yeah, it's very we're very kind of siloed off, and that's something that's been I've been at Discovery for about 8 years now, and that's something that's been it's been breaking down. Those barriers are breaking down already, and I think like this is just going to make that even quicker.
So in marketing, you're saying that you do a little bit of everything?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we're responsible for everything from the on-air spots that you would see, and then we do produce content for social and for there's all these everybody knows that there's a million new platforms, and we're kind of on the forefront of making sure that there's that investigation discovery has a presence on them, you know, whether it be through show lists, whether it's 30-second marketing spots. And then sometimes we even create smaller pieces specifically for something like a Philo or for Quibi, things that people might not necessarily know about, but they're learning about. So we need to make sure that we have a presence on all of those platforms.
And are you involved with advertisements as well? Advertisements kind of just, I don't know, like promoting the channel or promoting your page or
Yeah, so we actually, it's kind of funny that we're having this conversation today. Last night at 8:00 we actually launched a rebrand. So that included everything from a new logo to we have a new brand spot. You know, in marketing, we're kind of keepers of the brand, and everything that you know, a piece of creative there's
it's from all angles.
It is.
Making sure that you cover everything from all angles. I think marketing, I picture this big umbrella and just everything kind of falls underneath it. Like you know, it's the social media, it's the production for the channel, it's making sure that the brand stays consistent and making sure that you're reaching out on all platforms. So it's a lot. So I just kind of wanted to understand a little bit better your title, because it sounds like you have a lot that you are taking care of right now with investigation discovery. So
yeah, I mean, and it's interesting because with everybody working from home, it's also a lot of things that typically weren't necessarily in my job description. You know,
right.
there's a lot of technical aspects, things that just kind of happened and just were, you know, part of the everyday that now we're needing to address, like how sub-mastering process works. You know, like how do we get graphics from an internal site to an external vendor, things like that you know, were just seamless before that. You know, we're making it work for sure, but it's definitely, you know, we're kind of the keepers and we need to make sure that the trains run on time. So it's always been part of the job, but it's even more important now that we're in this environment where everyone's working from home.
And people are kind of learning things that they may be technical things that they maybe would not have known before.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and that's definitely something that that I think people are starting to realize more and more. I think with, like I was saying before, with all of the different platforms and all of those things, the technical aspect of the industry is something that I think that producers and management have always kind of been able to kind of skirt a little bit. You know, it was always kind of somebody else's, like, you know, somebody else knows how to do that. And
right. Somebody else knows how to do the computer stuff. Somebody else knows how to do the technical stuff. And now that you're home, you're kind of left to your own devices.
Everybody needs to be able to do everything if you want to make it work. And, you know, it's interesting to kind of see that play out.
So right now your experience working from home has been a little bittersweet, you know, because like you said, you were worried for a little while that some things would have slowed down. You're so used to having people right there on the side of you, right there next to you to say, hey, whatever your question is. And now you might need to wait for a meeting with them. Now you might need to send out an email and wait for a reply. But also it's helped you kind of work to your own devices and figure out some things on the tech side that maybe you would not have necessarily needed to do before.
For sure. I mean, I think, you know, through all of this, you know, I've become better at Premiere, which is, you know, I'm not an editor. I have no intentions of becoming an editor, but being able to kind of, you know, fumble around in Premiere has definitely helped me and my editor and our ability to work quickly. So it's one of those things where, you know, I think there's definitely a need for specialists still. I think that this, like, you know, being a jack of all trades is good to a certain point. But I think this has kind of made everybody realize that it's nice for everyone to know something, but there still needs to be experts on things.
Definitely.
And
just
I
for
think
the meantime.
that's a big takeaway that I don't think we would have necessarily seen before all of this.
So a lot of the work that investigation discovery does is very hands-on. What do you think has maybe surprised you the most about how your teammates and how reporters and just how overall the brand has transitioned to this, I don't want to call it so much a setback, but just to the pandemic, like what has surprised you the most about this transition and how everyone else is handling it?
I think the thing that surprised me the most is just the ability for people to work remotely. It's one thing for somebody who has an office job, who sits and looks at Excel spreadsheets. We have editors working on campaigns that are massive, and their ability to just almost seamlessly pick these projects up from our multi-million-dollar edit facility and bring them into their homes. That's been amazing to me. I mean, I think that the thing that surprised me the most is just I don't think anybody realized how much ability there was for people to work remotely on the edit side. And that, these guys, these people have there's editing equipment at their houses for the most part. And that bridge wasn't as there wasn't as much of a gap there that I think that most people thought there would be.
Like there wasn't as much of a setback. Even though people are working from home, it doesn't necessarily mean that production and work is going to slow down.
Yeah, and I think kind of what I was saying ineloquently there was that I think a lot of people are surprised by how much how
much work people can kind of do remotely.
How people were already kind of set up to work from home.
Okay.
I think that's the big surprise for me. It's like there's like I say, there's people who sit behind desks all day, and that makes sense that they're able to kind of pick up and work from home and do that remotely. For our edit staff, for our audio mixers, the fact that they were able to kind of bring things into their home, that they already had that stuff at their house, and their nimbleness and ability to adapt very quickly to a not easy situation in the midst of everything else going on with the pandemic.
Right.
That has been a huge surprise to me. Just that was a seamless transition.
Definitely. So with working from home, and even though it has been a little bit of a seamless transition for some, it's still a pretty, very stressful time for a lot of people making this transition. What are some of the methods that you have been doing to kind of cope with the stress?
It's interesting. So the first 2 weeks this is week 4 for us working from home here in Maryland. And the first 2 weeks we had a 9:15 meeting with everybody in our department. So it was about 120 people on a Zoom meeting at 9:15 every morning. And that was good to kind of set you up for the day, kind of get your morning structure. But after the first 2 weeks, they're like, yeah, guys, I think that this is a little bit much to have this meeting every day. So they pared it back to 2 days a week. And I think that that's been great to just kind of to have some structure, but where you can't escape work now. You're doing it at home and it's always there. So I think having time to step away is super important. We've been trying to kind of schedule meetings for certain parts of the day so that we do have time to eat lunch and not have to worry about having a call or a Zoom meeting or whatever. So I think that that's been important to try to have some sort of balance, whatever that looks like. I think that it's not going to look the same for everybody, right. But for me, it's making sure that you're still getting up at the same time and you're still doing the things that you would do if you were going into the office. It's just now instead of going to the office on
right. It's just kind of taking that break, stepping away, having that boundary from when I'm working and when I'm not, because you're not necessarily leaving your house as much as you used to, so it's probably pretty hard to distinguish that line. Gets a little confusing. All right. Well, is there anything you'd like to add about maybe coverage of the pandemic, maybe about what you hope for your brand with all of this going on, or maybe what you would recommend any students right now who are considering going into journalism during a time like this that can be pretty intimidating?
Yeah, I mean, I guess for me, I think for anybody looking to go into journalism, I think that it's a really interesting time because you're seeing like you're coming in at a time where it's so important and and you're seeing why, and you're seeing that it's how much people really depend on the job you do and the impact that doing it well or not doing it well can have on people.
Right.
I think that that's the biggest takeaway from this as far as like coming into journalism or entertaining it as a career choice. I think that that this is going to affect everything moving forward, and journalism is definitely part of that.
I would like to thank Melinda again for taking the time to do this interview with me, and I would like to thank all of you at home for watching this episode of Reporting from the Front Line of a Pandemic.